Another thing that I have doing some research into, listening to, practicing is the usage of what some people are calling like cone shaving. And
Ooh.
so the general idea is you are gently dropping the cone of your fermenter at maybe 12, 24, and sometimes up to 36 hours post yeast pitch, for tank full fermentation. You know what I mean? Conceptually, and this is what I would love to have. I would love your take on that practice, but also in my mind, what we're seeing is that anything that is hanging out in the cone of that fermenter at 12 hours is something that is not active. It's either going to be dead yeast, protein, trub, or whatever that you're then pulling off, obviously, in theory, to the benefit of the fermentation. What's your thought on that practice?
I think it makes a lot of sense. So the first time I heard about this was from some of the California brewers, like Vinny at Russian River, et cetera.
Yes.
I think it is. I imagine. I don't know if this is true. I imagine the concept is kind of derived from the same idea as this practice in Germany called wort flotation, where you're doing the same thing, but it's the opposite around, where they actually bubble air through the wort. All the shrub makes a raft, and they do that for a few hours, and then they rack the beer into the fermenter, leave the shrub behind. So it's the completely opposite setup, where cone shaving, you're letting it settle and then racking it off. Flotation, you're bubbling it to the top and then removing it.
Dude, that's interesting. I've not heard of that before.
In both cases, it's really smart, because what you're doing is you're giving yeast access to the trub during its lag phase while it's growing, which is good. Trub is good for yeast, but it's also bad for beer stability later on. So it's one of these yin and yang things. Again, trub has more protein, it has fatty acids in it. It has a lot of stuff minerals. It has a lot of stuff that's beneficial to yeast. It's great to have the yeast go through lag phase with some trub in the wort. But once that beer starts fermenting, trub is a negative. It can be, those fatty acids will oxidize, for example, and that reaction of trub, specifically with hops, can cause off flavors like mercaptan, that kind of gasoline-y, sewagey kind of sulfur. And I honestly don't know if much science has been done on cone shaving. And in fact, a lot of the German stuff is very prescriptive without much science. But I think it's reasonable to say that you get that stuff, precondition the yeast with the good stuff. You take it out of there, you can get the best of both worlds in terms of better yeast health and performance.
Sure.
Without risking some of those, negative consequences.
Well, and Vinny was even talking about he was leveraging it as a way to get, when he was harvesting his yeast, he was getting, less solids, a cleaner. He felt as if he was getting a cleaner harvest off of his stuff as well.